so can assist in answering questions. I will take it that the panel have read the report in advance of the meeting. Are there any questions? No? I mean, we'll go straight to the vote then. Is everybody in favour of appointing? Yeah? Brilliant. Thank you very much. On to the next item of business is the appointment of a chair. Are there any nominations? I'm going to need someone to put... Thank you. Councillor Whelan nominates. Is there a seconder? Councillor Leeming? All those in favour? Yeah. Yeah. Congratulations, Claire. Would you like to join me at the top table? 5 years to be adopted. Speak.
Okay, thank you very much for your trust and confidence. So second item today is appointment of vice chair. Do I have any nominations, please? Okay, so we have one volunteer. Do I have a seconder? Clearly Marcus is, oh, lovely. Okay. I'm sorry. Councillor Tong. Councillor McNally. Okay, that's lovely.
Just need a vote.
Okay, can I have a show of hands that people are happy with that? Lovely, thank you very much. Okay, before we move any further then, I think there's quite a lot of new faces around the table. It'd be really nice to just have a quick round of introductions. So my name's Claire George. I've been an independent member of this panel since 2016, and this is my third year. I'm now going into my third year as chair.
Philippa Rose, I'm the Senior Democratic Service Officer and I support the panel.
Are we on? Yeah. Good afternoon, Marcus Barnett. I'm the other co-opted independent member. Very glad to be here. I passed the interview phase a few weeks ago, having applied for this, and I'm not going to drag this out too long, other than to say I spent 30 years in policing, like many others in the room. I know I've got that experience. I retired as a chief super in London, and having done lots of fantastic things and had a wonderful career. But having lived in Cambridgeshire for 25 years, and now with some time that I've got available to me, with family members still serving in the police, I really felt it was my opportunity to, one, give something back, and hopefully to the panel, to the Commissioner and the team, to say, be a critical friend, but also here to help. I'm still a huge fan and a lover of policing, always will be. So whatever I can do to help moving forwards over the next few years, then I'm very much here to do that. So thank you.
Afternoon, my name is Elliot Tong and I am a councillor on Cambridgeshire County Council and City Council, and I'm brand new to the committee. Very excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kane. I'm a councillor on Cambridgeshire County Council, but I'm substituting for Councillor Anna Bratton.
Hello everyone. My name's Mike Todd Jones. I'm Cambridge City Council Cabinet Member. Portfolio includes community safety. So this is also my first meeting. Thanks very much.
Yeah, good afternoon everybody. I'm Jack Hudson. I'm the Chief Exec, the Commission's Chief Exec and Monitoring Officer.
Good afternoon everybody. My name is Catherine Kimberley. I'm Head of Engagement for the Police and Crime Commissioner. Nice to meet you all.
Good afternoon, Darryl Preston, Police and Crime Commissioner for Cambridgeshire and Peterborough.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Heather Sheldon. I'm the Head of Governance and Compliance for the Commissioner.
My name's Nick Edwards. I'm the Assistant Chief Exec and Director of Commissioning for the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Helen Leeming. I'm here representing South Cambridgeshire District Council.
Hello everyone, I'm Councillor Christine Whelan. I am a county councillor, but I'm here representing East Cambridgeshire District Council.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Councillor Jason McNally, representing Dogsthorpe and the Welland, also Armed Forces Champion for Peterborough.
Chris Wigan, Peterborough City Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Scott Warren. I'm here representing Peterborough City Council.
Good afternoon, everyone. Graham Kitchen, Head of Legal Services and Deputy Monitoring Officer at Peterborough City Council.
Thank you very much. And those of you that also struggled a bit with the bing bong, you make me feel a lot better. Thank you. OK, Pippa, do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Apologies of absence have been received from Councillors Green, Butel, Bradnam and Kerr.
Thank you very much. Item number 3, declaration of interest. Does any member have a declaration of interest that they need to raise? No declarations of interest. Thank you very much. So we move on to item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. As there's not a chorus of members present today that were also present at the last meeting, the minutes will be taken as agreed unless anyone who was present at the last meeting has something that they would wish to raise. No? Thank you very much. So we'll agree those minutes then, and I'll remind me to sign them before we go. Item number 5, questions or statements from members of the public. Pippa, have we received any questions, any public questions?
There were none for this meeting.
Thank you. So item number 6, review of actions and recommendations from the previous meeting. Commissioner, was there anything from the actions or recommendations raised at the previous meeting that you'd like to review at this point, sir?
Chair, if I may, there were no formal actions, but as usual, there were some questions asked which my team said they would take away. I think in most cases, direct responses have been given to panel members, but I should just quickly go through some of those areas. Councillor Bradham, I know she's not here today, constant theme with Councillor Bradham, quite rightly, about domestic abuse related death reviews. They used to be the domestic homicide reviews. Her particular issue was around the funding. We do have an update, the government's response to the consultation around the new statutory guidance. We expect that before the summer recess, so the guidance itself has moved forward. We have posed a question on a number of times on behalf of Councillor Bradham and of this panel in relation to funding. I don't think it's addressed, and I don't think that will happen in reality. We will have to find the funding between the constituent authorities, and I am one of them. We contribute £13,000 per annum, and we will continue to do so. So that was the first one. Use of e-scooters, another common theme raised by Councillor Sharp and Councillor Bradnam. I mean, I am pleased to report there has been some significant police activity. I think it's been publicised as well. Number of e-scooters seized, but I think we all know that's not the answer to this thorny issue. We need new legislation, particularly in relation to retailers and the selling of these things. I'm aware that the Combined Authority hold regular meetings, in particular in relation to the trials in Cambridge. I'm not sure if it's been going on for goodness knows how long. It seems to be the longest trial ever. I would like to see that come to an end, and that will be a conversation I'll be having, not an e-scooters necessarily, but a conversation I'll be having with the Mayor and the combined authorities' involvement. So not a solution, but there is some more activity by policing in relation to the criminal aspect of it. Antisocial driving on active travel routes and park and ride sites, I think we gave a response. You'll be aware as a panel, or new members, hopefully you would have read the annual report. We do a lot of work with our community safety partnerships, so we've involved community safety partnerships in that particular problem, hopefully to find a resolution with all the partners and the local community. Begging in Peterborough city centre, this is another area where I have a number of concerns raised. I've got a response from the neighbourhood policing team that they continue to enforce the public space protection order, but once again this is not a solution in itself. This is a partnership approach, and we will continue to work with all the appropriate partners to reduce antisocial behaviour. I mean, we say begging, for me it's about antisocial behaviour and criminality. And then of course there was a question around the PIL update. So this is the Magistrates Inspectorate for police forces and for fire service, and their last PIL inspection in 23-24, which showed a couple of areas of concern. One was around managing sex offenders. For that area of concern, I believe that has been withdrawn. Constabulary did a lot of work around that. But the other one, equally as concerning, was responding to the public, and this related a lot of it to the time taken to answer 101. A constant theme for this panel, historically, and myself, and 999s. I am pleased to report, and I won't give all the detail here, but can do. I think HMIC FRS came in last week, or the week before last week. We are fully expecting that cause for concern to be withdrawn as well. The Constabulary have done some really, really good work in upping their game, particularly in time it takes to 101 and 39s. In fact, we're one of the leaders in the country with the 39s now. Having said that, and the Chief will say this, that's good, really good news. But actually, for me, it's about what the police do when they get there. And I think we would probably all agree with that. So, Chair, that's an update on the soft questions.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that and the work that's gone into providing that. Okay, we'll move on to item number 7 then, the Police and Peterborough Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, the annual report for 24-25. So the next item is the annual report for 24-25. Commissioner, would you like to present this report along with your team?
Thank you, Chair. And firstly, thanks to my team. Clearly, all of the work behind this, they've been beavering away and putting together a report. I'm really pleased to present my draft annual report to the panel. Those that have been around for some time, and those that have read previous, both the police and crime plan and reports, my style and the team's style has been to keep these, as simple as possible, as accessible and readable as possible. Now, I've seen plenty of reports and police and crime plans that have gone on and on and on for 100 pages, and I'm not convinced that many people will be looking at those. So this is a public-facing document, and I want it to be just that, one that the public can consume. You will also note that it's in the fantastic new design of Anglia Ruskin University student, that which I think we got for £50 an Amazon gift, but really pleased that we were supporting that. So this is very much a snapshot. I will refer to my notes here, not least which my team has pulled some briefing notes together for this panel. The very first part I'd like to highlight in the report is I've just mentioned that over the past year we have seen some significant improvements in 39s, 101, call handling and our demand hub. In fact, the 39s now, I think we're recording an average of 2 seconds. I'm particularly pleased to have been able to invested £247,000 into dedicated problem-solving coordinators. These are people who work with our community safety partnerships and the local partners to deal with local issues. So some of the high harm areas like child exploitation, like county lines, there's lots of work going on, quite rightly, but this is more around some of those really localised problems, and there's some examples that we have given. We've seen 932 days of additional patrols in 20 hotspot locations. Some of this is from additional funding we bid into from the Home Office around antisocial behaviour. Particularly pleased that we've commissioned and worked with the third sector around some targeted youth work, diversionary activity. You know, this for me is really important. It's all well and good the police going out and doing the hotspot patrolling, you know, but that for me is not the cure. They've actually gone out with detached youth workers, and we've seen some excellent results because of that. And the funding of 41 partnership interventions, and that's thanks to around £600,000 of serious violence duty government grant. We've also, in the past year, invested around £2.4 million in the provision of local services for victims. Obviously, that's a key part of my statutory responsibility, but I believe we punch above our weight here in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. We have a fairly unique, bespoke offering for victims. Although there is no league table or measure, what I do know is that they're visited by a number of other forces up and down the country looking at their model. So really pleased. Just going to go into a little bit more detail in relation to each of the pillars of the plan and what the report is looking to. So safer communities, you may be aware that we have the neighbourhood policing guarantee. This was a manifesto commitment from the Labour Party when they got into government. We have now seen some more of the detail around that. So as a result of that, in this year, the Constabulary are able to recruit an additional 30 police officers, 7 PCSOs and 13 special constables. The Constabulary is also provided with a further £1 million of funding for that recruitment. And the government has sought local policing and partner plans for boosting activity, in particular in towns this summer. So you may have seen nationally there's this, what they're calling a summer initiative, particularly around our towns and city centres. Of course, I welcome any initiative. This one's not actually funded, and I would class it to some extent as business as usual. You know, I would want, you know, good policing responses in our towns and cities. However, I will say this as well. I'm not going to forget our urban areas. You know, most of our county is urban, it's rural. We have seen some significant issues, and that will always be a priority for me. Budget implications following the spending review. So we've had the comprehensive spending review. I think the Home Office is still going through the numbers. We won't know our funding envelope here in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough probably until December, which gives us literally a couple of weeks to work out what we're going to do the next year. I would say this around the budget, though, here in Cambridgeshire Constabulary. I'm aware, and many of you may be aware, that many police forces are under real significant financial pressure. Real significant financial pressure. We in Cambridgeshire are one of the least funded, worst funded constabularies, and I know other services in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are in the same place, but least funded, particularly per head of population, per head of capita. Now, I would never argue that a policing funding formula or grant is based purely on population. That doesn't make sense. You know, you want money and resources to go to those areas of high harm and most need. I get that. But I still think it's totally unfair that they're using population data from 2013 when we know that this area has probably received one of the highest, if not the highest, increase in population of 10%. I have made the case personally to the Policing Minister and the Home Secretary. I bore them whenever I see them. If they could just put in the algorithm the population, I'd be happy with that. But unfortunately, it's in a too difficult draw, but I will continue to do that. Having said that, we've got some brilliant people in our finance teams, and I think the Chief has run a tight ship, and at this moment we are in a reasonable place. But going forward, it will be a challenge. I just want to mention firearms licensing. Some of you as councillors may be aware of this, but there has been a significant issue with the issuing of firearms licence across Cambridgeshire and indeed Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire in our collaboration. Quite frankly, I'm not happy about this, haven't been happy, and I've made my feelings very clear to the Chief Constable. There is now an improvement plan. And this isn't just about, you know, farmers and rich people with their guns. There's actually real risk here. And we need to be doing far, far better. I've been given assurances that we are. I'll move on to early intervention and prevention, which is really an area that I am really focused on, particularly the early intervention, our young people. The panel will be aware that we now have a statutory serious violence duty. The police do, along with other statutory partners. What we have seen some really good work here, some fantastic work across the partnership in tackling serious violence. There are some figures later on, actually, and it's always very easy to pull out the really good figures and then miss the ones that perhaps don't tell it. But there is something around serious violence that I do want to make the panel aware, because I'm not sure it's terribly clear. When we talk about police recorded crime, that doesn't always necessarily tell us what we need. We have the Office of National Statistics, which is a far truer picture, but even then, it doesn't necessarily tell us the true picture. When it comes to serious violence, and particularly knife crime, I would suggest that police statistics, although helpful, are not an indication of the true problem that we face. Many people who are stabbed don't tell the police. That is the reality of it. So the best and accurate method is actually hospital data, health data, because most people who are stabbed go to hospital. And that's the data we use. And what we have seen, and I don't know the absolute up-to-date, but I know we saw this year a further decrease in hospital admissions for sharp and knife crimes, or knife injuries, sorry. And we're talking about since 2019, since I started, that's around a 60% reduction. So if we can trust that's a figure I'm really proud of, that the partnership has managed to tackle knife crime, and that's because of the fantastic partnership work going across the piece. Something else I'm proud around as well is our approach to tackling violence against women and girls, a national strategic priority. Frankly, it's always been a priority of mine. That's my background in law enforcement and policing, specialising in that area. We've seen some fantastic work. I just want to pull out one area, the business against abuse, which is quite unique. We don't know it's going on elsewhere in quite the format that it's going on here. We want to extend it. And some of it, it seems like the obvious is training of nighttime economy, pubs, clubs, training of door staff and things, how to recognise signs of sexual predators. But moving on, we then got Stagecoach, and I've mentioned this before, you've seen this, who have joined us in partnership. All of their drivers and other staff have been trained in how to spot signs of predatory behaviour and then what to do about it, and we have actually seen that training being used, and I believe this actually will make a real difference. Tackling crime and antisocial behaviour, moving on to that. I've already talked about the community safety partnerships. I've got to say, and I said this before, community safety partnerships, that's why there was a sort of review done of the government. They look very different wherever you go across the country. And I think the word I would use, if I was to be fair, is that they're variable in their performance. I was of an opinion, and always have been, that there is no issue or problem that the police can arrest their way out of. It needs a partnership approach. I think we would all agree with that. And for me, the best place for that to work is community safety partnerships. They're there already, they have a statutory responsibility, but what was clear to me is I didn't think they were supported. It's all well and good asking them to do something, but these were people with day jobs who, these were bolt-ons, these were additionals, which I'm sure you all recognise. So we spent some money, we've got in people, and we've had some really good people. The problem when you get really good people is that they get asked to go and do other things, but we've had some really, really good people across all of our CSPs. And they've done some fantastic work, and we can provide more detail around that. I'm going to move on to road safety. This is another key issue. We continue to invest in a road casualty reduction officer, and I will continue to do so. Our community speed watches, we continue to support them as best we can. We also have a strategic partnership, they call it Vision Zero, which I will be chairing moving forward. So I will be chairing the strategic partnership. Once again, this is a partnership approach moving forward. And supporting victims and witnesses, I've already mentioned the significant amount of money that's gone into resourcing our demand hub and other areas. I think it's important also in this space to talk about some of those other areas that we are looking after victims and survivors, particularly with funding and the recruitment of and maintaining our specialist advisors around domestic abuse, sexual abuse and sexual violence, and specialisms around children, victims and survivors there as well. And there is a lot more detail within the report there. Building trust and confidence, I'll leave that because that's the next item. And one of my team members is here to really give us some detail around that, whether we need to. And I've mentioned already a little bit about the finances. They are going to be challenging moving forward. What I would say, though, in relation to finances, we have managed to bring in significant funding here in Cambridgeshire Constabulary. Once again, that's a partnership approach. We have some really good people, so when government does suddenly announce it's found a little bit of money behind the sofa, we're in a really good position to dive in and say, yes, we can use that, to keep our communities safe. And I think that's all our authorities and policing come together really well to make that really good case. So, Chair, I think I will leave it there. I'm really happy to take any questions from panel members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. A very accessible, high-level kind of summary, but I think we just need to pause for a second and think about the work that goes in, not only from your team, but obviously from the constabulary doing a lot of that frontline delivery and all the partnerships right across Peterborough and Cambridgeshire that make that work and those outcomes possible. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you, Kat. I'm really sorry. Could you just turn your... thank you. Councillor Kane.
I am subbing for Councillor Bradman, so I'm going to be very thorough, as she would be, as I feel I have to be. So I have a few questions, if you don't mind. Firstly, I'm really pleased that you raised the issue of firearms and I'm aware that it can be up to 18 months for the firearm licence, and that's something that people have been speaking to me quite a lot about, and it really is affecting athletes. We've had business owners who are losing their business because they just can't get this. So I'm really pleased that there is an improvement plan. Are we able to have sight of that improvement plan?
That I don't know, because it's a constabulary, but I will certainly take that away. I'll just say on this as well, if they are using it in relation to business or sporting activities, then they should be fast-tracked. Okay. If that is not happening, and Jackie's going to look at me with horror in a moment, if that is not happening, you come to me.
Okay.
It was a shocking situation. It is being rectified, but it's going to take some time to get it back to a place where it needs to be.
Brilliant. That was my easiest question. Letting you in lightly. I think one of the things that in the report that was really, really good was and I think it's Operation Dante, is it? The one that was the money for the hotspot, where you got the extra money for the police and the overtime, where people were on the ground, and that was really popular. And I know that was government money, and also that was used in other aspects in the keeping community safe aspect. Do we know whether we'll be getting that money again, that grant? Because that seemed to be something that was really popular with...
The answer is no.
Okay.
We don't know. I would suggest, given current financial climate, it is less likely. But well, I don't know. But we will ask.
Right. I've got two more questions, and then that's it. I promise. So I think what was really good was you highlighted the work you're doing with primary schools, and I really think that, given with the issue with ASB that we're seeing across the whole of Cambridgeshire, working with private schools clearly is a priority to get in and get children from a young age sort of committed to it. Because what we're seeing is, as would have been mentioned many times, people don't report ASB. And I know you said there's a rise of 9%, and I would say that's an increase of a reported increase of 9% when we know that the picture is probably much more serious. Again, I think it would be really good to see that if there was any way of getting that extended to sort of Huntingdon, St Neots and other parts of Cambridgeshire as well, because I know that's something that was working really well. And I guess this is a kind of little cheeky one because it's related to your report, but it's future action. We know that with ASB, response, visibility and patrol and deterrent is how we get to the crux of it. And it's something in Cambridgeshire, particularly in St Neots and Mid Cambridgeshire. We've seen a lot of, I know the issue of Histon's been brought up to you, but the St Neots, and there's Love's Farm with motorbikes, there's lots of stuff. How are you proposing to tackle the issue when there's no consequences or no seen consequences, even if the sort of perpetrators are caught, is kind of what I'd like to see. And I know that's a bit cheeky.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting one, isn't it, about, consequences. I'll take you back, and I recognise that issue. I'll take you back, because you mentioned there, visible hotspot policing, and where that's done and it's intelligence-led, it can be very, very useful. And we've seen that in that sort of action that's been taken with that additional funding and business as usual, by the way. It's not just additional money. This is the police's job. But I will take you back, to, the police can't arrest their way out of it. They can be visible in a hotspot, and then what? And these are young people. What are the consequences? Well, we can put them through the criminal justice system. It's going to cost us far more in the future, and it's not really that. I mean, some will have to go through completely. I'm not soft on crime here, but for me, where I would like to see that investment or a significant amount of it go is, like I mentioned, with that diversity youth workers actually going out with the police, and actually trying to tackle the problem head on, both with them, with families, and with schools as well. And by the way, I have every sympathy for our schools. So much is asked of them. Their primary function is to educate, but we ask a whole lot more. The constabulary have increased their school offering with the schools teams. I myself spend an awful lot of time in schools, and the reason I mention schools, that's the one place where all young people will have contact, at least for a certain amount of time. Perhaps, and maybe I'm going in a direction that perhaps the question wasn't necessarily directed at. I am really concerned, and I would say it here, about the amount of young people out of school. And this isn't just excluded children. This is what the emotional avoidance part. There's absolute evidence. That young people who don't go to school are far more at risk of entering the criminal justice system. And I think that's one strategically we need to look at. Consequences. As I say, there are a number of sort of what policemen call disposal outcomes, and I think it depends on the level. Antisocial behaviour is a bit confusing to us all, really, isn't it? What does it mean? What does it mean? And I think you've got to look at each individual case and treat them as an individual case, and that is why I put so much emphasis on the community safety partnerships, because the answer might not be policing. It might be the local boxing club. It might be something else. I don't know. So that's why those local solutions to local problems, I think that's working.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, thank you.
It's a kind of an observation for the report and a question that's probably mixed into it. So page 33, you talked about the serious offences, knife injuries and such like going down, and there are obviously in terms of health data. I just wonder whether it's going to be helpful. In the paper, it says, while there was an overall increase in serious offences involving sharp-bladed weapon, and there's not a figure next to it, wonder whether that might be helpful to have a figure of what that is, and does that refer to the over in page 34, possession of offensive weapons rose by 17%, but it doesn't seem to imply that, because it sort of talks about serious offences. So what are those offences, and in maybe against what was quoted earlier on, saying that the health data is going down, which shows there's less injuries, are you assured that the offences that are rising in this space, if it's possession of offensive weapons, what are we doing about it, or what's the constabulary doing about it?
Yeah, good point, well made. We'll have a look at how we reported on this. You all know, as well as me, I said earlier about that police recorded crime.
Councillor Whelan. Is it working? No? As regards sort of public officials and people, like, has there been an increase in any sort of hate crime or anything else, or abusive behaviour towards public officials? Looking at, like, democracy generally, it stops people, or sort of certainly councillors and people standing for election because of abuse. I mean, emails especially. I know I've reported personally that I've had abusive emails sent to me. We got during the time I was standing for election, that some of these emails have been going on since 2015, and they have been reported, but they are not seen as hate crimes or hate incidents. Is there anything being done about that?
It's a good question. I don't have the details. I'm not sure how that's recorded by the Constabulary in relation to elected officials. I do know that there is, significant work that's done, particularly around members of Parliament, but I'm not so sure elsewhere. I'll take that away and ask the question of the Chief Constable. Look, Councillor, it's not lost on me. I get it as well. I think any elected official in this room, and I think we probably all take the view, yes, we put ourselves in the public domain. Yes, we probably realise we need to be a bit thicker skinned, but no, we shouldn't be subject to abuse and criminality, frankly. When it's brought to my attention, I will certainly hold the Chief Constable to account. To be fair, at any one time there are a number of live investigations around elected officials receiving all kinds of threats, etc. And I know the Constabulary will generally do their very best. But I will take that away and ask the specific question if it's recorded differently.
Thank you.
Councillor Warren?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to focus on the domestic abuse because obviously I welcome the support and the bidding that we've got, but it's all about the information that we're putting out, because I think a lot of the general public don't understand the severity and what actually goes under domestic abuse. So it's kind of, what information are you putting out about spotting, especially with stalker behaviour, domestic abuse, and looking at the targeting of certain groups, because I know it's starting to get a little bit more increasing towards the older generation, that situation. So welcome that, but what kind of information we are there to spot those situations, those symptoms about that situation with domestic violence, so we're getting more people reporting domestic abuse.
Thanks for that question. And you say most people out there won't understand. Unfortunately, far too many people do understand because they're going through it, and we recognise that as well. Look, I could answer, but I've got an expert in the room, so I'm going to hand over to Nikki.
Okay, so we're part of a wider partnership.
It'll say
There we go. Okay. So we're part of a wider partnership with the local authorities and all the agencies, statutory agencies and all the providers in our county, and we coordinate communications campaigns about spotting the signs of domestic abuse, stalking, sexual violence, and a whole range of issues. So what we try and do is ensure that the single message is going out across the county. We're not all putting different messages, and Catherine, who's here, who's our head of comms, also helps coordinate some of that work and actually sits on a national group looking at communications linked to violence against women and girls as well. So what we think is really important is the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Partnership lead a lot of that, and we echo that through our social media channels. Our constabulary do have really good quality content on their websites as well, and we're just pushing it out through as many channels as we can. But also there's this group of people in our county called Domestic Abuse Champions. Now, it isn't just domestic abuse, it's other war crimes as well, and that's training people in other agencies and in the community, giving them a little bit of an enhanced skill set so that they can actually spot the sign and actually then share that with other people as well. So we're actually using, almost like harnessing the community interest and engagement as well. And also our third sector colleagues in Women's Aid and Rape Crisis do a lot of work. And what the Commissioner was talking about earlier, Businesses Against Abuse, that saw the training of 2,000 people in our nighttime economy, in our retail economy and in the transport sector in Cambridge alone. And the Commissioner's aspiration is to roll that out much more widely and actually into Peterborough. And we're working with Peterborough City Council and their aspirations for the Purple Flag to actually roll that out more widely and then the market towns. So much going on in this space. Appreciate there's always going to be people who don't access that information, but we're doing what we can.
And if I could just feed into that really from a personal experience as a teacher, there are on the other end, there's programs of education around healthy relationships, coercion and control, all those sorts of things from the kind of the top end of primary all the way up that is linked into those same messages. Oh, sorry, yes. Councillor Todd Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just a bit of a follow-up really to Councillor Warren's question and the response there. I wouldn't mind a comment really on reduction in the service for independent domestic violence advisors. I'm aware that there are various reasons for this, but it is a real priority in terms of the police and crime plan in terms of violence against women and girls. So I wouldn't mind a comment on your view regarding this, and also whether, given that it's a strategic priority, whether there could be a review of what some resources available to the Police and Crime Commissioner to try and address some of that reduction in that service.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to hand over to Nick in a moment. I know this has been a concern. I think there's a bit of miscommunication here, but I'm going to let Nikki answer the question with the detail that you require.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think we've obviously, at the last meeting, we were discussing the fact that Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council had decoupled. So there was a restructure of the IDVA service, and that actually meant that there was a redistribution of the posts going into each of the areas. Now, traditionally, most of the IDVA service is actually funded through the local authority. And as you'll be aware, we do invest into other areas. So we're funding a new service which we'd reported to this panel that started in April, which was for victims of domestic abuse who are classed through a risk assessment as medium risk. So actually, whilst the number of IDVAs on paper may have declined, we've got other services in place there. And also, just to make the point, it isn't that the Police and Crime Commissioner has reduced any funding going into domestic abuse. We can only port over the funding we get from central government, and some of those funding streams did end last financial year. So the Commissioner has been topping up to enable us to support the medium risk area that was a responsibility of the local authority previously, but we've took that on because they've not got all the resources, and they wanted to focus on the high-risk work that's their statutory duty as part of safeguarding. So there hasn't been a reduction in what we've put in, that we've got funding available at all. We're putting every penny we can in. It's just government funding ending, and the decoupling makes it look like there's less, but the IDVA service is still managing all their cases. We haven't got anybody waiting as far as we're aware. We don't have waiting lists or anything like that, so people are getting a service when they come in and they're high risk.
Thank you. Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Todd Jones?
Yeah, so just to say that in terms of personnel, in Cambridgeshire, not Peterborough, but in Cambridgeshire, I think there's a reduction of 7.9 full-time equivalents in terms of the independent domestic violence advisors. So that's where the concern is, and whether there are going to be any gaps that possibly within the budget that the Police and Crime Commissioner has. Working obviously with the local authorities, as you mentioned, there can be, first of all, some analysis of whether anyone is falling through those gaps, because it's absolutely critical support, and whether there could be funding from elsewhere in terms of redirecting priorities. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that the responsibility for funding IDVAs doesn't just lie with the Police and Crime Commissioner. It is very much a partnership approach. Tackling domestic abuse is everybody's business. It's really important that everybody pulls together. So, of course, we're having regular conversations with our partners in the local authority, also within health and other agencies. And actually, we're quite far ahead with our statutory duty under the Victim and Prisoners Act. So the new Victim and Prisoners Act places a requirement on local authority, health and police and crime commissioners to jointly commission services for victims of crime. And actually that includes doing an assessment of need, developing a victim strategy and then commissioning jointly. And actually we've got a meeting on Friday where we're all coming together to look. So the gaps that you are proposing are there at the moment. We'll be discussing on Friday because our local authority colleagues will be there, including Cambridgeshire County Council. But just to say, yes, there was a reduction in IDVAs, but some of the funding has gone into the third sector, so gone from the statutory sector into the third sector to actually deliver our medium risk service. So it's not that all of the funding has gone, it's just gone into a different area of business.
Thank you, Nikki. Councillor Tong.
Good afternoon. Now, I am brand new to the panel, so I feel that I'm going to go to something quite fundamental, and if you could elaborate on that, I'd really appreciate it. And that is about how causal links are established in this report, because obviously you are making a statement about an action taken and the result of that. Just to refer to one in particular, on page 15, which is page 5 of the actual report, it notes that more visible policing, this is slightly paraphrased, resulted in a 50% reduction in antisocial behaviour in Peterborough and a 30% reduction in serious violence in Huntingdon, which is a fantastic thing potentially. But I was wondering what evidence supported that claim, what that was benchmarked against, because I think, well, on a big scale, things like this can be a bit abstract, and it's very useful for residents in particular to know where this information is coming from so we can do more to convince them that action is being taken against these things.
That's a really good point, actually, about that causal link. I'll be quite frank, a lot of it, in this report, we did, and this is the result. And I say we, the partnership did, and this is the result. I think where the gap is, and to answer your question, is that I don't think we do enough around this, because one of our problems is, and particularly in a time when we do have reduced budgets across the public sector, is joint analysis. Police analysis on its own, I've already explained with the knife injuries, for example, won't give us the picture. What we really need is a joined up analysis of all our data. And that's something actually I've been talking about for some time with partners, because this is should be a joint endeavour. I mean, as local councillors, please do have these conversations with your constituent authorities, because ultimately this will cost money, and it will be difficult because all our data is kind of different. I'm not an analyst, but I know that this is tricky to do. But if done, the end result I think would be fantastic. I mean, we all hold lots of data, and I'm told by lots of the authorities they've got some really good, really pinned down local data about real localised, but we're just not sharing it, and that's not because we don't want to. There are occasions when people don't want to, and that's wrong, but it's not we don't want to, it's we don't know how, and we don't have the resource to do it. I think we should, and that's an area I will continue to look at. So that's not a full answer, but I think we should be doing more to actually understand the data.
Can I follow up? I actually really appreciate that acknowledgement of this is a little bit of a gap in understanding. And, well, to sort of reference this particular point, visible policing, I think, is a really good thing. I think we want to show the police as community members and people within the community, not just this kind of abstract force of punishment. However, I think it's useful to think about the other factors that may have led to this, because I imagine there's all sorts of actions, both by you as the Police and Crime Commissioner, but also by the different local authorities that have an influence on these things. Different programmes run on their behalf. And I think trying to get a clearer picture of what we can do to tackle things like serious violence, that's just better for everyone. So yeah, I appreciate you acknowledge that. This is something that's good to work on. And I will definitely have some conversations with my colleagues and think about how we can try and think about this a bit more holistically, because it is really important and it is all interconnected.
I cannot. I mean, this isn't unknown, and I'm not saying there isn't work ongoing. I mentioned our community safety partnerships. They do a lot of analysis. They have to create plans and strategic assessment. So there is a lot being done. But I think collectively we could do more, which would end up in safer communities.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. I have a few comments and a few questions. First of all, thank you for noting the peer review response actions, because I think it's worth noting that significant work took place last year in response to those recommendations. I also wanted to acknowledge your comments on funding. I think it's something that we all have to be aware of, and across different political parties, it's a Cambridgeshire issue, and it matters to all of us that that we have this historical lack of funding for Cambridgeshire, and it perpetuates year on year when pay, increases in expenditure is given on a percentage. If you start from a low base, you're continually perpetuating that, so it's important. Thank you. I have a few questions about things in the report. The first thing is on page 9, there's mention of a stalking consultant psychologist, and it sounds like this is quite an innovative role. It says that there's only a handful in the country. I wondered how that was funded, whether it was a trial or a permanent post. And I just wanted to recognise that that's actually something that I appreciate seeing, because I think most people on this panel are aware that stalking is often a precursor or part of more overtly violent crime. So I was pleased to see it there.
I'll hand over to Nikki once again. She's the expert in this field. But I am pleased that the Constabulary and the Partnership have recognised stalking and the significance of stalking. That's not the same in every force area. We've had some dedicated sort of resource around this. Chair, if I may hand over to Nikki.
Sorry. So the consultant counselling psychologist, Becky, she's employed by CPFT, so our Mental Health Trust. So this started a couple of years ago when the Domestic Abuse Perpetrator and Stalking Intervention Fund was released by the Home Office. We put in a bid from Cambridgeshire for some funding, and at that time there was 4. I think we're one of 4 now areas that have actually got this post. So what it was about is it's about an intervention for stalkers. So hugely innovative, and it's funded jointly through the Home Office. But what we've managed to do in Cambridgeshire, we've now got probation investing in our post as well. And what we're trying to do is look at how this can be mainstreamed through health and probation funding, because the primary cohort of people that this psychologist is working with is probation clients. So she has historically worked as part of the multi-agency stalking team, and I think you might have seen it. It all came very much on the back of the Susie Lamplugh super complaint, but we'd already started looking at this before that. And she worked, so the psychologist worked with a couple of what were IDVAs at the time and are now ISACs, which independent stalking advocates, and also a dedicated police officer. And what they're doing is every week looking at cases where there could be some really positive work with the perpetrator. Some of this is mandated through what's called a conditional caution, through a stalking protection order, so that the people have to engage with a psychologist. Some of the cases have been identified by probation colleagues to say that this person might benefit from some intervention. It's been really successful so far. And so successful that the probation funding has enabled our psychologists to do some one-to-one work in beds and hearts. It's just doing sort of case advice, which means we get a bit of investment into our post as well. So watch this space, because there's going to be some more work evolving and rolling out on this.
That's really good to hear. Will this be a permanent post then? Is it? I know it's innovative. Is it a trial or is it a permanent arrangement?
So the post she's been in post for 2 and a bit years, funded through the Home Office Domestic Abuse and Stalking Fund. That part funds it, the rest through probation. The conversations probation are now leading is how we can mainstream this, because it is partly a health intervention, whether we can get contributions from our ICB and also probation.
Thank you. So my second question was actually about probation. The probation service is smattered through this report in various places. I wondered whether you felt that the relationship between the constabulary and the probation service was working as well as it could, because it's a crucial part of preventing reoffending.
I think to deal with that, obviously there's different levels of that interaction and partnership working. The tactical level, where police officers and probation officers come together. From my perspective, at a strategic level, I chair the local criminal justice board. Every area has one, and it is generally the police and crime commissioner who chairs them. That criminal justice board is made up of the criminal justice system partners, as you would imagine, including probation. I would certainly say at that strategic level there is a good partnership and working approach. And that also is with the Crown Prosecution Service courts as well. But I think strategically we have a good level. This is an area obviously that we monitor in relation to the constabulary and the tactical. Look, I can't speak on behalf of probation. We do have a new lead for probation actually locally who I'm very impressed with. I can't speak on behalf. I think that's another agency that is under-resourced and under-invested. It comes back to when we have new governments of whatever political class, it's very easy to talk about police officer numbers. What we don't say is we need more probation officers, we need more youth workers, because actually that's often where the solution is. But to answer your question, I don't have any concerns. I'm assured that we are working collaboratively and well with our probation service here in Cambridgeshire.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm just wondering, perhaps in a later meeting, whether we could perhaps have a bit of a report about actions between the police and probation, if that's possible. Just an update on how it works and the types of things that where you're working closely together. I think that would be of interest. Thank you. The third thing I wanted to speak about was it's a bit of an extension of what you were mentioning before about the e-scooters and the sort of antisocial behaviour surrounded by those. I'm just wondering whether that could be broadened slightly to something that keeps coming up in my ward and I think many other wards, which is sort of motocross things and quads herring around on bridleways, which is it's actually quite intimidating for people that are just walking their dogs or just fancy a bit of peace in the countryside. It feels like it's sort of on the edge of, they're not on a registered road, they're often in private land or country park land, and I wondered what the police's response to that would be, because it's almost on the edge of it is definitely on the edge of normal highway regulation.
Obviously, I've had my mailbag. I've seen this, and I've been to areas. I don't what area you're talking about. Milton, I know, and Histon around there. We've had lots of complaints, but that's the same across the county. Look, I can take this away, but I think the policing response will be different compared to what the actual local issue is and what the local problem is, what land it's on, etc. I will take you back though. I know that this can be a significant concern for local residents, and it is antisocial and can be dangerous. Obviously, the police will need to prioritise, and that will mean they can't deal with every e-scooter, quad bike, etc. I think we will get that, and we accept that. We would want the police to take action where and if they can. But once again, I'm going to take us back to the community safety partnerships, because there's other things that can be done, like target hardening. Make it difficult for quad bikes to go down these areas. There are options, gating and those sort of things, and that's where I'd like to see our local problem-solving groups come together. Not a full answer, and I don't think we're ever going to be able to resolve this thorny issue, but I would like to see a localised response.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. First one is an observation. I want to ask you two questions, and probably you can help me answer the second one with your teaching past. Shoplifting from small businesses and large businesses. I walked into a large supermarket only last week where I saw 2 security guards. They'd apprehended a shoplifter. Fantastic. They'd done their job. They were taken. I went and did my bit of shopping, came out, and I thanked the security guard for doing his job. I goes, "What's happening?" And they said, "Nothing." They took the items off her and had to let her go. And I said, "Well, why is that?" He says, "When we call the police, they don't respond for up to 7 hours. So they have to detain that shoplifter themselves for 7 hours, and it takes them out of the game of doing their job." What is the answer? They seem to be losing faith.
The answer is it shouldn't take the police 7 hours, should it? You know, that's a crime being reported to the police. I mean, obviously, if you've got 2 security guards and it's contained, you know, it might take a little bit longer than an emergency response. So shoplifting, this isn't just shoplifting, it could be any crime type, couldn't it? But let's talk about shoplifting. We have seen an increase nationally, locally. I think there are lots and lots of reasons behind that increase, and a lot of it is organised criminality as well, we know. But some of it, I'll be honest, is also, and this isn't, you know, calling out the victims, and they really are victims, but a different approach. You talked about security guards there. Unless, you know, the big shops still have security guards, most don't. And in fact, if I'm surprised or not, but a lot of policies of shops is not to actually detain or do anything about shoplifting. They let them go, and ultimately we all pay for that, don't we? And I think that's a slight change, but that's off point. It's what the police are doing about it. We have seen some operations here, ongoing operations, particularly around spree offenders, and that's in the report. I think more can be done. We do have the summer initiative coming up, unfunded as it may, but that is particularly around our town and city centres, dealing with things like shoplifting. So it's an area that I'm going to continue to work at. I don't have all the answers, and I think we need to do more. You know, shoplifting, victimless, of course, it's not. We know it's not victimless, and actually, at every level, whether it's the major retailers who employ lots of people and drive the local economy, or the smaller ones. And when we talk about business crime as well, I don't like that word, business crime. It kind of undermines what it is. It's crime, and it's crime with victims at the end of it as well. The shoplifting pandemic is a bit of a national issue. I'm hoping, but I'm not relying on it, that we are seeing more reports from shops now, and that may account for, and I've asked the Chief about this, that may account for some of the increase, but we need to do more. Once again, in partnership, who are the people doing this? So we've got organised criminality. So police and crime commissioners nationally are doing some work with some of the major retailers around the intelligence gathering in relation to the organised crime. But then you do have a lot of what they call the spree offenders, people with addictions. Actually, if you can deal with the addiction, actually you're dealing with the criminality that follows as well. And so it's bigger than just putting a load of police in a city centre, but you know, it's something I will continue to work on.
Thank you for that. The second question is violence in schools perpetrated by children towards teachers and TAs. It's on the increase. I keep getting reports about this. Where does the reporting end? Can they report it to the police as an assault?
Absolutely, and on occasions they will do. I'm a school governor, and I've been close to schools, and I've spent a lot of time in schools. It is really, really tricky for sort of all teachers, but particularly the management team, in dealing with, you know, these sort of issues. Real moral and ethical dilemmas on a day-to-day, well, an hour basis. Look, it's Ely College, I'm a governor at. It's a big school with all the kind of issues that go along with that. So I hear this day in, day out. I mean, there is actually particularly specific legislation in relation to schools, you know, around things like knives and things like that. You'll know better than I, which they grapple with. But, you know, if teachers are being assaulted, it's for the school collectively or as an individual to decide, you know, actually, you know, what's the best approach. But I mean, particularly if you're talking about significant or serious assault, whatever you might call that, I would say that they really should be reporting it, because that individual poses a risk not just to a teacher. If they're going to do that to their teacher, what are they doing out in the streets? You know, so, but I would like to think it's a partnership approach, as opposed to just, you know, a straight police come in or come out. There is a conversation, and it does happen. That's the reality between teachers and policing as to what the best outcome might be. But yeah, they can report it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Warren. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to look at obviously rural areas and rural crime and that situation, and just flesh a little bit more detail about what you said about that, because you obviously say in the statement about working in partnership to prevent and detect. What does that actually mean? About how does that look like with that prevent and detect the rural crime with stealing from farmers? I think we mentioned a bit about the illegal bikes that are being on the ground, hair coursing, wildlife crime, and about what does that actually look like with that situation. And obviously you said about putting feedback to hold chiefs of council. What else are you doing to help prevent and help the police deal with this rural crime that's becoming a bit more of a problem, because it's seen as a little bit more of a safe area to go for criminals in that situation? So just want a bit more details about what the Commission is doing about tackling rural crime and what that partnership looks like with the Action Time and the Countryside Watch.
In relation, Scott, in relation to being a safe place to come, that's the last thing I'd ever want it to be. I want Cambridgeshire to be as hostile as it possibly can to those who want to commit crime in our rural communities. I also recognise when we talk about rural, we're not just talking about farms, but they all bring different issues with them. So we've got people living in rural communities, and then we've got our farms, our businesses in our rural communities. So look, what am I doing around it? I mean, firstly, I invest in and I attend, one of the regular attenders, a few PCCs in the National Rural Crime Network. So right at the top there, we're looking at some really strategic issues around organised criminality. So some crime types that occur here in Cambridgeshire, if you had worked in London in the police all your life, you would never have heard of, because I hadn't until I came here. The stealing of agricultural machinery, particularly the sat-navs and those sort of things. Police should be dealing with that. It's organised criminality. I keep saying it should meet thresholds to actually be looked at nationally as well by National Crime Agency, but they will have other priorities potentially. But we need to actually be working with others. So that sat-nav thing, I don't get it. So anyone who doesn't know, tractors have these really, really sophisticated sat-navs. They're worth in excess of 10 grand. And you can go and steal it, and it would end up probably in Russia, because we sanction them, so they can't get them any other way. And they can be used there. I don't get that. If you've got a bit of tech worth £10,000, how can a manufacturer not make it so that it's useless unless it's in the hands of the owner? I just don't get it. I suspect it's probably because it's in the manufacturer's interest. They sell more sat-navs. And I'll take this panel back. I mean, when I started in the police, the most common crime was vehicle crime, theft of and from vehicles, because you could get into your Ford Escort with your front door key. Yeah, that was simple. So it was really easy to do, and people would still leave money in there, etc. Now, what happened was that became one of the least crime types, because manufacturers did something about it through pressure from governments. Because actually it wasn't in manufacturers' interest to do anything about it. Now it still is, because actually we've seen a resurgence of vehicle crime, very, very sophisticated organised criminality. But yeah, it needs manufacturers. So to some extent it's a partnership thing. What we also do locally, what I do, is I invest significantly in Countryside Watch, fantastic organisation. They're a charity, but they work very, very closely with the rural community and the constabulary to prevent, particularly, but also to give intelligence and information to the police and across the partnership. Thirdly, and those representing any rural areas, if you speak to the farming community, we do have a dedicated rural crime team here in Cambridgeshire. They're called RCAT. Our rural communities love them because they are brilliant. They're probably one of the best in the country. The only issue is the rural communities want many, many more of them. But of course the Chief Constable has to balance those resources. When they're about and they're doing their job, they are very, very effective. I will say, because I think we put it in the report, this county saw an invasion of criminality back in January. The constabulary response was frankly quite shocking on the day. The Chief Constable publicly apologised. And, that just wasn't good enough. I don't expect that to happen again. Having said that, it doesn't matter how well prepared the constabulary were, This was so organised and so many criminals coming to commit criminality. It would have been difficult. But anyway, I still think the Constabulary did a shocking job. They are recovering that to some extent. There's been a massive operation, lots and lots of arrests. We're awaiting Crown Prosecution Service decisions. I'm hoping people will go to court and feel the full weight of the law in relation to that incident.
So, Todd Jones.
Right, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was going to come in a bit earlier, but I want to go back to mention the Peel report, which has been raised a few times, and for me this was bedtime reading along with your annual report as well. And I was struck that in many respects the sort of more direct operational matters of the police were outstanding, good or adequate, but not responding to the public, that was inadequate. Managing offenders and suspects, which you referred to, that's now been closed at a concern, that was inadequate. And leadership and force management was requiring improvement. Responding to the public, you mentioned some data, I think, about how that's being addressed, and you're hoping for that concern to be closed. And I just wonder if you could say a bit more about that, or provide more analysis in that respect, because the inspector's report referred to at the time in 2023 a decline below the 90% level expected across England and Wales in terms of response to 999 calls, and I think the number of callers hanging up on a 101 call, was just really not acceptable. So some more data on the improvements that are coming in that direction, which of course I welcome, would be really welcome.
So there is a lot more data behind that. I'm happy to take that away and see what we can do and what we've got off the shelf. I'll talk about the 3 nines. That was an interesting one because obviously responding to the public, previous members of this panel and certainly members of the public have had concerns around 101 and ringing the police and attendance for some time. And in fact, previous panel members have visited the control room, the demand hub, and had a presentation. It is in a lot better place now, and there is lots of data to support why, and that includes those people who hang up, etc. So we can certainly get that. One of the issues that HMRC picked up was around response time, as in how long it takes to pick up 999, and then how long it takes the police to respond to 999. And Cambridgeshire were not doing that well in relation to responding to the 999. But one of the reasons it wasn't doing very well is that it had and I don't know why, it had a self-inflicted response time. So their response time in Cambridgeshire was 15 minutes for 3 nines. That's more or less unachievable. We're a big rural county. You don't have to have that, and in fact most rural counties wouldn't. And the chief will say, and I would agree, it's about answering 3 nines urgently is important. You could have very, very significant harm. So that is important. But what we then want to do is get there as quickly and safely as possible and then do a good job. And if they do it in 16 minutes, I'm really happy with that. But 14 minutes was the ticky box. So I'm not sure. But anyway, the chief has, with an agreement with HMRC, removed that 15-minute. And as a result of that, we've actually seen the response times get better. Interestingly, because it's rather than controllers trying to get people to be an imaginary target for no reason with no science, we're actually able to direct people to where they need them. There is more detail, and I'll get you it where I can.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Just in relation to the data, and it's a really good question, but the Commissioner has the Business Coordination Board, and the minutes are published on the Commissioner's website. And every quarter there is a performance report provided by the Chief Constable, and it covers an awful lot of the data that's included in there.
Thank you. And I was one of the panel members that had the pleasure of going to the demand hub and seeing firsthand the actions and reactions of that whole room, that whole group of people. who don't know what they're going to deal with the second they pick up the phone. And I think the other thing that struck us while we were there, you know, one day you might have had 400 calls and the day before or the day after it might have been 650. So that, you know, that need to take that first response, good quality response, to then be able to prioritise and dispatch, you know, we did see firsthand that day. Any further questions on this report? Of course.
Just one observation. And obviously new to this, we've talked, or it's been mentioned numerous times about the precepts and funding, and that obviously is a significant factor in the way that the force runs, and I understand that. I guess it's really, if we've missed the opportunity now, what can this panel do for you, the Commissioner, moving forward, picking up on what Councillor Lehman was saying earlier on, really, to say, how do we as a panel better engage communities, understand what the feeling and strength is of policing, to help you, on behalf of all of us, get the answers and get the funding that's required. So if we haven't, as a panel, previously done enough, or if we can do more, what does that look like? If it's not for now, to sort of flag going forward.
Yeah, thank you. The panel has actually previously supported. I think we wrote a letter. I think the panel has written a letter. I think everybody I know has written a letter. Our MPs have written letters and lobbied, and there's been parliamentary debates on the issue. I will always reach out to this panel for support in those conversations, but particularly elected representatives as well, with your political connections, and I know you do this as well. But because you're quite right, this is not about politics. This is about Cambridgeshire, and we're all fighting for the same thing. So, you know, I will continue to shout loud and clear. There is obviously, you know, a bit of a problem with our argument, though, when we, on one hand, tell government we need more money. On the other hand, we got, you know, some of the lowest crime rates. You know, a frankly better performing police force than the Metropolitan Police, Greater Manchester Police, West Midlands, who receive lots of money. And you can see some civil servants sitting there saying, well, they don't need any more, do they? I think it's, you know, it's managed well. The other area is that I would also talk about, because I am keen that we have a really good and well looked after workforce, because policing is about people. They have unfair conditions here in Cambridgeshire. We are collaborating with Bedfordshire and Hertfordshire, and we have officers sitting next to each other who are paid differently. Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire officers are paid more, and in some cases considerably more, for doing the same job, sitting in the same building. That, to me, is clearly wrong. We've made that case time and time to government as well. And the Federation, of course, will make that case. But the problem is, a good problem to have, is that we have the highest retention rates in the country. So, you know, that's great. My point to government is always, don't punish us for being good or being inadequate. Don't punish us, but I'm afraid that sometimes isn't a message that goes down well, and money will still be thrown at the Met. And I'm not Met bashing, by the way, as well, because I was the Met, but they'll still throw money at forces that seem to not be able to manage it quite so well as we do here in Cambridgeshire.
Sorry, could I just add something to that as well? So when we come to do the precept survey with the public, which is generally around the time of the settlement, we would appreciate some support around an honest conversation with the public. So obviously we strive to be as transparent as possible about the financial challenges, but obviously there is always some comeback from the public. So if you can share that for us as well, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely, we absolutely will support in any way we can. Thank you. Any further questions on this item? No? We will move on then to the next item, which is a thematic pillar update. Commissioner, would you like to introduce and present this report?
Thank you, Chair. And one of my team here who put this, and our Director of Governance is here as well to answer any questions. I'm going to be brief with this paper. Hopefully you've had time to read it. Not because it's not important, because it absolutely is. And this is around the thematic pillar update of building trust and confidence, one of the pillars of the police and crime plan. Before I go into this, because this very much talks about some of the processes and governance around the ethical oversight and the standards oversight, I do have a personal view in relation to building trust and confidence. Everything what we talk about here is really, really important, really important. But I actually think the biggest issue with trust and confidence, we've seen some, awful national cases, and this can be different across the country in different places. So, London might have different problems to Birmingham, to Merseyside, to Cambridgeshire. But I think the biggest thing around trust and confidence is lost when the police don't do a good job or just don't turn up. That's the biggest area that I hear talking to people. I rang the police, probably the first time they've ever done it, and then they got a text saying your crime's closed. When they've got CCTV and everything of it happening. And that bit for me is when people get fed up and lose trust and confidence in policing. Just something else I might mention here as well, and I've mentioned to this panel before. I recently attended an event, and we had a fantastic update by some academic talking about trust and confidence in policing. Nationally, we believe trust and confidence in policing runs at about 62%. 62% of our population have trust and confidence in our police, which obviously we would want a far greater number than that. And there are many reasons. I mean, some people will never have trust and confidence in policing, and many of those for their own reasons. But 62% is an interesting figure, because when we looked here in Cambridgeshire, and there was a very, very big survey carried out by consultants, far-reaching across different communities, done on behalf of Cambridgeshire County Council, when the question was asked by them, do you feel safe or very safe, over 85% responded yes. Yet if you talk about trust, confidence and policing, we see a different figure. So I asked the question of the academic this. I said, this happened. And he said, yeah, absolutely right. It does depend on the context of how that question is put. If you're saying, do you think the police are doing a good job? Not really, because I had my bike stolen and they didn't do anything about it. But do you feel safe? Well, yeah, of course I feel safe. It's a safe area. So I'll stop there, but I just found that quite fascinating. But that doesn't mean to say we have to do more in relation to trust and confidence. So there are a number of things that we're doing in relation to this. Obviously, I hold the Chief Constable to account. We have those regular performance meetings. So there is that ethical oversight as well. Our professional standards, so professional standards departments, this is those within policing who are responsible for standards investigating things that go wrong in policing, and particularly those complaints and professional standards. We have equality, diversity and inclusion, and that's spread over a number of areas in relation to different boards, both internal and external, and our ethics panels. I have a duty in relation to monitoring complaints. Actually, that was kind of an option. You could go further than this as a police and crime commissioner, but I think we got it about right. So my office, and we do have dedicated resource about monitoring complaints on conduct and the performance of our professional standards departments. Custody oversight and community scrutiny. We have some brilliant people. We did some press around this recently. Independent custody visitors. They're all volunteers. Some of them have been doing this for years and years and years, giving up their time to go into our custody complexes to make sure that those people detained are being looked after as they should be. And of course, young people's voices are now heard through central youth panels, a new Rothschild style. So that's the young people as well. Other key measures, well, I chair the Business Coordination Board. This is my main governance body for scrutiny, and the minutes of that are published. I oversee the appointment process for misconduct panels, so those running misconduct panels, I have to make the decision on the appointment on each of those. So, Chair, I'll leave it there. There's a lot in that report. Heather is here if there's any detailed question. I mean, one area maybe that I didn't mention, that as police and crime commissioners, if we choose to, and most do, I have a national portfolio as well, which actually takes up significant time, just as MPs do. My national portfolio is forensics and biometrics, which may not be the first thing people think about when it comes to policing, but trust me, that's caused some significant issues over the past few years. Because if forensics falls over, the criminal justice system will fall over, because most cases have a forensic element. And particularly nowadays, there is no crime, I suspect, that doesn't have a forensic element, given digital forensics. But with fast-moving technologies, brings great opportunities for policing. Live facial recognition, AI, all those sort of things. But with them comes some massive ethical and moral considerations as well. And as a police and crime commissioner, I sit nationally in relation to some of that work. So take that very seriously about the ethical use of these tools in policing. I support them if they keep us safe and get rid of the bad guys and girls, but it's got to be done in a way that takes the public with us. So I'll leave it there, Chair. Happy for questions.
Thank you very much. Anybody got any questions? Councillor William.
Is that live? It's on. 5.3, the hate crime scrutiny panel. So you've launched that in 2024. Is that quite well attended? And what sort of demographic are you? Because it obviously mentions race and all disability and everything, and gender and sexuality. Is there a broad range of people who attend that? On how many roughly attend that, please? Thank you.
So we have two different types of scrutiny panels. We have scrutiny panels around stop search and use of force, which anyone is invited to attend. So we have roughly about 12 to 15 people on those panels. What's happened with the hate crime scrutiny is slightly different in that we've gone out to the community and spoken to people who are directly affected by either those crimes personally or their communities are, and then invited them in to scrutinise. So in terms of the scrutiny, it's anything that's defined as a hate crime. So like you quite rightly say, we are looking at gender, we're looking at sexuality, we're looking at race and ethnicity. And what happens is they're given a specific case, so something that the constabulary have dealt with previously, and just asked to identify what they think is really good learning and additional areas which could be improved, and then that's fed back into the constabulary.
Can I clarify? So it's basically like the use of force and the stop and search, but it's for victims who have been subjected to those hate crimes?
Absolutely. So we do invite victims, but it's not just victims, it's people who would represent a community of people that might be targeted as well.
Thank you. Councillor Tong.
I wanted to touch on the exact same subject because I definitely agree. I think confidence in the police is damaged by accusations of mishandling of this sort of thing, to be blunt about it. And I think that this sort of community-driven engagement and feedback tool is a good way to try and rebuild confidence and also make sure the police is doing the best they can. One thing I think is a little bit conspicuously absent, and I'm not saying this intentional, is the outcome of this appraisal. Has it been positive so far? Is there qualitative and or quantitative data to try and judge how the police have handled this, so you can actually come up with criteria for assessment, self-assessment, to improve on this sort of thing? Sorry, to sort of summarise that, I guess what has been gained via this process so far?
Thank you. Absolutely. So with all our scrutiny panels, we have two types of feedback. So you have individual specific feedback, which is going to go to the officer involved, and that's both in terms of anything negative that's been identified, areas for improvement, or, all the good stuff that's come out as well. If within that scrutiny panel, everybody says we've got some really serious concerns here, then there's a direct referral that goes into PSD, the Professional Standards Department, to look at exactly what's gone wrong in terms of that officer's conduct. But there's a bigger piece of work as well, which is around those general themes that are being picked up, and I think that's where a lot of the detail goes. That goes through our organisational learning group, and is then cascaded down from there. Now, there's loads we've done in terms of specific specific cases. I won't go into them all today, but just a couple of things that spring to mind is recently our custody scrutiny panel looked at strip search and putting detainees in these, they call them rip suits, so they can't damage their clothing with it. And it was mentioned that for a lot of females, having your bra taken off you, there's not a lot of dignity in that. And that was fed into the constabulary, and then from there they've created bras that are safe for females that are being detained, but also that they can't injure themselves with. And then just another one that springs to mind off the top of my head is when they scrutinised body-worn footage a lot. That's the primary way that they're scrutinised. And the problem was with body-worn footage, it's too late, so they turn it on and the incident's already happened by then. So there's been some work done with the provider, so now you get about 15 to 20 seconds before, so you can see a bigger picture. So yeah, lots of good work going on in that area.
I just want to say I think that's really good to hear, and I think these specific examples seem like very productive things have been done, and it's great to see both plans to make improvement, but also the substantive action that has come from that. Sorry.
Just, I think the question's been asked a couple of times today. What can you do to help? With all of our panels, I think we've got an event tomorrow evening to celebrate them actually, which I'll be going to. We have some fantastic people who give up their time to do this work, and they get their job as well. They are independent. But like everyone else, we struggle sometimes with the diversity on those panels because it's often people who have the time to do this. And particularly around younger people. We do have diversity on those panels, by the way, and we've been active in that, and we do have it. But that's always a struggle. So, if you know anyone, or you can put the message out in your local communities, that's really helpful. We often go out looking for custody visitors, for scrutiny panel members. So it'd be good, to get your support. You will probably be better at it than us in some areas.
I'm very sure that if you keep us informed of those, tell us what you're looking for, we'll do what we can to support. Thank you. Any further? Councillor Leaming and then Councillor Whelan.
So basically, the use of force in all of the scrutiny panels, I'm actually on some of those, and they are a good way of the public actually scrutinising how the police handle things, and they are well worth going on to be. I'll be quite clear about that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really interested to see all these panels and sort of oversight bodies which are handling these complex ethical issues. But I wondered when it came to embedding those down through the constabulary, is it how is the sort of training of the constabulary monitored, scrutinised? How do you ensure that the contents of these panels is disseminated through the constabulary?
So the formal answer to that is through that business coordination board, where we will get reports from the chief constable on these sort of areas, confidence in policing, etc. So there will be, and there always is, formal documentation around that. On an informal level, we know this constabulary has a culture statement. It was the first to do so. You could ask the question, so what? Well, actually, that's a check and balance. So lots of the decisions taken by leaders and management, it's checked about a culture, and that will be, a lot of that will be drawn up from the learning of the lessons from these groups, feeding into that as well. Ultimately, my job is that holding to account. These different panels, these different processes and mechanisms help me do that. And as I say, formally, it's through that business coordination board. But there are informal conversations that we have as well.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Thanks, Chair. Commissioner, it's just on page 19, the Business Coordination Board, it's just a an observation really, and whether this is covered within it, and if it is, should it be noted? So I, from my past life, and I'm sure we are all the same in thinking health and well-being of policing, and you've said it's all about the people, absolutely right. Does the Business Coordination Board cover within it in holding the chief to account for efficiency and effectiveness, the health and well-being of the force, as in how many people at any one given time are off sick, are on restrictions, what are we doing to manage some of that? Because again, hand in glove with funding formula, efficiency, how many people are at work versus not. If it is covered, which I suspect it probably is as part of that, should it be noted here so that when the public get to read the report, from a perspective of the Commissioner, we are a caring organisation thinking about the health and well-being of the force?
Absolutely. Just for clarity, the Business Coordination Board is public facing. So there will be stuff that we won't be formally going through there because it shouldn't be public facing. But most of it is, so a lot of this is dealt with there. In addition, I hold regular meetings with the Police Federation and Unison. So I hear direct concerns from them in relation to wider issues and individual cases as well. So I maintain those really good relationships. In relation to how we, and we'll take that away and have a think about that.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on this item? No? Thank you very much. Well, the recommendations are within the report. Are members in agreement? We're happy to accept those. Yes? Thank you very much. Okay. We're now moving on to our final agenda item, which is the forward plan for the panel. Jack, I believe that you're staying for this, but the rest of the team, thank you very much for your not just attendance today, but all the hard work day in, day out that goes into being able to provide us not only with the information, but obviously the activities you're reporting on them. Thank you very much. Thank you, and thank you for staying, Jack. So I think members, you've got in front of you or have sight of a copy of the forward plan. You'll be aware that quite a few of the actions and topics that we need to cover are part of our responsibility, so the things that we have to do and report back and kind of review regularly. But are there any other topics, anything else that anybody wants to see on that list?
Not off the top of my head.
No? Jack, is there anything that you want to ask us, tell us?
So thank you very much. I've picked up a number of the points that have been raised today. So Councillor Lehman, you mentioned around criminal justice, and that's in the paper on the 24th of September around that. So we'll cover the criminal justice and community safety awareness. And I think it's just really important that we pick up things at this meeting, but also we have a pre-brief to these elements where all councillors are invited to come along and say what you'd like around that. So I'd just like to market that opportunity around it to do that. But we'll pick up on the criminal justice arrangements there. I'll send you further information in relation to the Peel point in there, and I know it's been raised as well around that, so I'll make sure that's circulated. Again, we publish that on the website, and we'll be waiting for the outcome from HMIC FRS, who have to write off the cause for concern. It's now that for them to consider, so that could be a couple of weeks before they actually determine that side of things. The violence against women and girls, I know that was mentioned in there, and we've got the commissioning grants coming again in November, so that's an element of it, and supporting victims and witnesses. again, the shoplifting element, you know, we can bring in that side of things there. And also from the Commissioner and Grant's perspective, we will also be bringing in November the constabulary's budget considerations. So that's where we provide an overall round of what we're looking at for 26-27 budgetary wise, and what we're funding and what we're not funding. So there's that opportunity there, and we think that's very useful, albeit we won't know the outcome of the spending review until December when we get the actual figures. We're starting to build a picture of what it's looking like at this present time, and that gives the panel with some considerations ahead of the precept in there. And then the one in March, we've got tackling crime and antisocial behaviour. Again, we can bring some detail down into that based upon your feedback and comments around that. So I think this covers all the themes as you want. We do have that opportunity for you to feed stuff in, and we will try and link it into wherever we've got in there, but that's our proposed plan for you.
Thank you very much, Jack. And I echo the kind of system and arrangements that we've moved to in terms of having that pre-brief, which is an opportunity for your office to provide the kind of the basic information, and for members to listen and interrogate that information, and, you know, ask any questions at that point that can then be built in. So one of the things that I intend to do as a re-elected chair is work with Pippa and my new vice chair on a calendar for you that is on a single sheet of paper, which will be very clear. Here is the pre-brief date, here is the meeting date, and I'm going to really, really strongly say my expectation as your chair is that people prioritise attendance at both those events. We don't have that many formal meetings, but actually the formal meetings work best and are most effective when actually people have been and participated in that opportunity for the pre-brief to have a look at that information and ask those questions that can then be included. There will still be questions at this point in a formal meeting, but actually the Commissioner's team give up a lot of time and effort and energy into those pre-briefs, and to date they, you know, I'll be honest, they've been really poorly attended, and that's not okay. I think we need to work harder on that. So we will work on a list. The other thing included in that list is we're going to be asking people to confirm attendance at meetings. Lots of people, including myself, travel in excess of an hour and a half to get to a meeting. We need to be really sure that we're going to be correct when we get there. So part of that moving forward is just to be able to say, actually, when Pippa sends the agenda pack out, please, we're going to ask for you to confirm, and we're going to be needing people to do that. Yeah. Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Yes, Councillor William.
Just on the pre-meets, obviously, a lot of us are obviously councillors. We have other meetings that prioritise that. That's maybe challenging, and also some people have got day jobs as well.
I have two jobs myself. I think what we're going to do is put together a calendar of dates. People have got those in the diary at the earliest opportunity. We're planning for a whole municipal year now, so actually if we get those dates in the diary, I'm hoping that people will have the opportunity to prioritise them.
I'm just saying that there may be challenges with some people.
I completely understand that.
To attend the pre-meets because depending on the time of the day and everything else.
Yeah, if there are we're tied in largely to being able to work with the team. We usually do them kind of back end of the morning, don't we?
Yeah, and our teams run, and it's not with the Commissioner, in essence. So this is an opportunity where those are the themes. Is there anything you would like us to include in those themes? And then we will, and if you feed that back, if you can't make those meetings, we can still feed it back and we will include it in. So it's really to try and get maximum benefit of these meetings. That's what we're about.
And everybody's time and attention, and I think the changes came about as part of a kind of review that we did on the work that we do, and we were seeking an opportunity to influence in the limited way that we can, but but to actually influence those decisions. So part of the understanding the approach to commissioning and grants is to feed into, when we think about budget constraints, we understand the implications really clearly of this action or that action, who wins and who loses. So it was to make sure that people have got information ahead of a meeting, and in terms of being able to understand that and come back and ask those challenging questions. What would be the impact if we make this decision or this decision? Thank you. Any further comment, question, query? No? Thank you very much. We are going to try and put on, particularly for new members, but anybody else welcome to join in, a little bit of training in terms of the role of the panel, the role of members on the panel. We'll maybe, if you've got 2 minutes, we'll maybe just have a conversation and try and identify a date, maybe not a separate date, maybe a half an hour ahead of the September meeting, if that's possible. Yeah? Thank you very much for your attendance, and we'll see you all in September. Thank you. Back here.
Another date coming out for the confirmation hearing.